The grand mahogany double doors of the master bedroom stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness teasing the pristine hallway. Desiree Murray, renowned CEO of Murray Investments, paused, a faint frown creasing her perfectly smooth brow. It was almost 7, and Paul, her husband, a man whose punctuality bordered on the obsessive, should have been downstairs for their customary morning coffee. He hadn't stirred since she left for her early swim, a minor anomaly, perhaps, but enough to prickle at her meticulously ordered world. The scent of brewing Blue Mountain coffee, courtesy of their housekeeper Winnie, was already winding its way through their sprawling Kingston villa. Outside, the first tentative rays of the Jamaican sun were beginning to chase away the pre-dawn mist clinging to the lush garden. The chirping of early birds, a cacophony she usually found soothing, seemed unnervingly loud in the unusual quiet. Desiree pushed the door open further, stepping into the opulent sanctuary that was their shared space. The room was vast, dominated by a 4-poster bed draped in rich emerald silk. The air conditioning hummed softly, a constant, unobtrusive drone. Her gaze went immediately to the bed. Paul lay motionless, a heavy duvet pulled up to his chin. A line of concern deepened on her forehead. He was typically an early riser, eager to review the financial news before the market opened. Paul? Her voice, usually crisp and authoritative, was laced with a hint of uncertainty. She moved closer, her bare feet silent on the plush carpet. The room was dim, the heavy blackout curtains still drawn. She reached for the bedside lamp, her fingers fumbling slightly with the switch. Light flooded the immediate area, illuminating Paul's face. And then, time seemed to fracture. His eyes were open, a dull, unseeing stare fixed on the ceiling. His usually olive skin was ashen, almost gray. A dark, congealed stain marred the pristine white pillow beneath his head, a grotesque flower blooming amidst the emerald and cream. Her breath caught in her throat, a sharp, painful gasp. The faint metallic tang, almost imperceptible before, now hit her with the force of a physical blow. Paul. Her voice was barely a whisper, a desperate plea to a world suddenly unmoored. She reached out a trembling hand, her fingers brushing his arm. It was cold, too cold, a cold that seeped into her very bones. A scream tore from her throat, raw and primal, shattering the stillness of the elegant room. It echoed, bouncing off the high ceilings, a terrifying testament to the horror that had just unfolded. She stumbled back, knocking against the heavy bedside table, sending a crystal water carafe crashing to the floor. The sound was swallowed by the ringing in her ears, the frantic drumming of her own heart. Winnie, alerted by the shriek, was the first to arrive, her face a mask of concern. She took one look at Desiree, then at the bed, and let out a small, terrified gasp, clapping a hand over her mouth. Her eyes, wide with shock, darted between Desiree and the lifeless form of Mr. Murray. Miss Desiree, laud God. Winnie's voice was a choked cry. What happened? Desiree could only shake her head, tears streaming down her face, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her perfectly manicured hands, usually poised and decisive, were now shaking violently. He's gone. Paul. Oh God, Paul. The next few minutes were a blur of frantic phone calls. Desiree, surprisingly, found a flicker of her usual composure, enough to dial their family doctor, then, with a profound sense of dread, the police. Her hands still shook, but her voice, though hoarse, was steady as she relayed the horrifying discovery. Within the hour, the Murray estate, usually an oasis of calm luxury, was transformed into a buzzing hive of activity. Police cars, their blue lights flashing silently, lined the manicured driveway. Detectives, forensic teams, and uniformed officers moved with a quiet efficiency that felt strangely intrusive in their private grief. Detective Inspector Gerald Jerry Davis, a man whose sharp intellect was often underestimated by his perpetually calm demeanor, was the lead investigator. He was a veteran of the Major Investigations Division, his career marked by a string of high-profile cases solved with meticulous patience and an uncanny ability to read people. Beside him was Sergeant Andrea, Andy King, sharp, observant, and with a pragmatic approach that perfectly complemented Gerald's more contemplative style. They stood in the doorway of the master bedroom, observing the scene. The room, usually a testament to opulence, now felt sterile, cold. The emerald duvet, still partially covering Paul Murray, was a grim splash of color against the pale skin of the deceased. Cause of death, preliminarily, looks like a single stab wound to the chest, right over the heart. The forensic pathologist, Dr. Tina Chambers, stated in her clipped, professional tone. She gestured to the dark stain on the pillow. Looks like the wound was deep, minimal struggle evident, suggesting either a surprise attack or the victim was incapacitated. Gerald nodded slowly, his gaze sweeping the room. Time of death. Difficult to say precisely without further examination, but rigor mortis is setting in. I'd estimate sometime between midnight and 4 this morning. Sergeant King, already noting details in her small notebook, pointed to a small overturned vase on a side table. Looks like a struggle of some kind, though, Inspector. The glass carafe on the floor, too. Or a staged one, Gerald murmured, his eyes narrowing slightly. Mrs. Murray found him. Yes, Inspector. Winnie, their housekeeper, a woman in her late 50s, confirmed nervously from the hallway. She had been questioned briefly and was visibly shaken. She went for her swim, like she always do. When she come back, she come up here, then she just scream. Gerald turned to Desiree, who was now seated in the living room, wrapped in a thick blanket, sipping lukewarm tea. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face pale, but she held herself with a fragile dignity. The initial shock had given way to a profound sadness, punctuated by moments of blank disbelief. Murray, my deepest condolences, Gerald began, his voice surprisingly gentle. I know this is incredibly difficult, but we need to ask you some questions about what happened this morning. Desiree nodded, her voice hoarse. Of course, Inspector. Anything? Could you walk us through your morning routine, please? I woke up around 5:30, as usual, Desiree recounted, her gaze distant. Paul was still asleep. I had my usual glass of water, then went down to the pool for my morning swim. I usually swim for about an hour. Winnie was already up, preparing coffee. I came back upstairs around 6:45, expecting to find Paul awake. The door was ajar. I went in, and I found him. Her voice broke, and she buried her face in her hands. Did you touch anything in the room, Mrs. Murray? Sergeant King asked gently. Desiree looked up, her eyes wide with fresh horror. No, only his arm. I tried to wake him. I screamed. Winnie came. Then I called the doctor and the police. Did you notice anything unusual before you went to bed last night or this morning? Gerald probed. Desiree shook her head. Number. Everything was normal. We had dinner, watched some television. Paul had a meeting scheduled for this morning, so he went to bed a bit earlier than usual, around 10, to get some rest. I stayed up a little later, going over some reports. Did you hear anything out of the ordinary during the night? Our bedroom is quite soundproof, and I'm a deep sleeper. I heard nothing until I found him. Gerald thanked her, his eyes lingering on her for a moment longer than necessary. Desiree Murray was a striking woman, even in her grief. Her wealth was evident in every detail of her person, from the diamond stud earrings still in her ears to the understated elegance of her silk nightgown. Her composure, while admirable, felt almost too perfect, too rehearsed. He knew that grief manifested in countless ways, but something about her controlled despair pricked at his intuition. As the forensic team meticulously scoured the bedroom, they discovered a crucial piece of evidence. A small, intricately carved letter opener, its handle made of dark polished wood, its blade stained crimson. It lay partially concealed beneath the edge of the bed, not far from Paul's lifeless hand. "Inspector, we found the weapon," one of the forensic officers announced, holding it carefully in a clear evidence bag. Gerald examined it. It was elegant, almost an art piece. "Matches the type of wound, Dr. Chambers?" "Precisely. A single-edged blade, narrow enough to cause that kind of puncture wound." Sergeant King's gaze sharpened. "That looks like the kind of thing Mr. Murray kept on his desk in the study. I saw one similar when we did a walkthrough." Desiree Murray was questioned again, this time with a more pointed line of inquiry. "Mrs. Murray, did your husband own a letter opener like this?" Gerald held up the evidence bag. Desiree's eyes widened slightly. She stared at the weapon, a flicker of something unreadable passing through her gaze. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "He had several. That one, I think it was a gift. From a client, perhaps?" "Did you ever handle this specific letter opener, Mrs. Murray?" A beat of silence. "Perhaps. I mean, it was in the study. Sometimes I would open mail there, but not often." "Did you touch it last night?" "No, Inspector. I was in my home office, not the study last night. I didn't go near Paul's desk." Gerald leaned back, his expression unreadable. No forced entry. No signs of struggle beyond the overturned items. The weapon, belonging to the victim, found within the room. A wife who claimed to have slept through the entire ordeal, only to discover the body hours later. The pieces were beginning to coalesce into a chilling, familiar pattern. "We'll need to take your fingerprints, Mrs. Murray," Gerald stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "Standard procedure." Desiree nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping. Her composure, carefully maintained, seemed to be crumbling around the edges. "Of course, Inspector." As the day bled into evening, the Murray estate remained under police lockdown. The media, already sensing a story of both wealth and tragedy, began to gather outside the ornate gates. The air hung heavy with unspoken accusations and the quiet hum of investigative activity. Later that night, Gerald and King reviewed the preliminary findings of the station. "No forced entry as suspected," King summarized, tapping her pen against her notes. "Winnie, the housekeeper, confirms she locked up around 9 p.m. last night. No other staff were on the premises overnight. The security system was armed, and there's no record of anyone entering or exiting." "Which leaves us with a very small pool of suspects," Gerald mused, staring at the enlarged photo of the crime scene. "The wife, or someone already inside the house?" Winnie's account seems solid. She was asleep in her own quarters, separated from the main house. She seems genuinely terrified. "And Mrs. Murray?" King raised an eyebrow. "Her story about going for a swim, sleeping through it all? It's convenient. And the letter opener. If it's his, and it's found in the room, it suggests someone familiar with the house, familiar with his habits. Her fingerprints will be key," Gerald agreed. "If they're on the weapon, and his aren't, that changes everything." The impact of their affluent lifestyle, usually a shield, now felt like a cage. The secluded estate, the lack of outside witnesses, the absence of any signs of a forced entry, all pointed inward. The killer, it seemed, was already among them, hidden beneath a veneer of wealth and respectability. The next morning, the preliminary forensic report arrived. "Inspector," Sergeant King announced, her voice serious, "they found Mrs. Murray's partial fingerprints on the handle of the letter opener. Faint, but definitely hers. No other identifiable prints besides some smudges we can't make out, and no prints belonging to the deceased." Gerald leaned back in his chair, a grim expression on his face. The pieces had clicked into place with a chilling finality. The stillness in the sanctuary had been shattered, not by an unknown intruder, but by a chilling truth. "Prepare the warrant, Sergeant," Gerald said, his voice quiet but firm. "We're arresting Desiree Murray for the murder of her husband, Paul Murray."